Hi, everybody. Welcome to the BC Wine Grape Council's R&D Committee's third Thursday for August. We have a couple of old friends presenting today, by which I mean longtime friends, not old people. First, we have Kellie Garcia. She's the director of the Cross-Commodity Leadership Support Project, which brings together tree fruit, wine, and wine grape industries to work on common challenges and opportunities. She previously worked in water policy and planning at the Okanagan Basin Water Board, ran her own environmental consulting company, and managed, by which I mean basically created, sustainable wine growing BC for many years. Kellie has lived in the Okanagan most of her life and has a deep appreciation for its beautiful landscapes and local food and wine, and I can attest to that. Welcome, Kellie. Take it away.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Or afternoon. Thanks for the introduction, Kathy. So I'm just going to give a really quick intro to the Cross-Commodity Leadership Support Project, or CCLSP, and then I'll be passing it over to Galen to really dive into BC DAS, which is one of the projects we're coordinating. So what is the cross-commodity approach? It's a 3-year pilot collaboration between tree fruits and wine grapes, as Kathy mentioned. It's funded by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food through IAF. And so we've got 5 partners. We've got the Cherry Association, Grape Growers Association, Wine Grape Council, Fruit Growers Association, and the Okanagan Kootenay Sterile Insect Release Program, which actually administers our the project on behalf of all of the partners. So why did those partners want to launch this pilot? Basically because we have a lot of common challenges, whether you're growing grapes or apples or cherries or some other fruit. And of course, capacity and funding are very limited. And we've got these pretty wicked problems we're dealing with right now with climate change and the economy and labor shortages and all sorts of things like that that are shared challenges. So we really need to align investments of time and money to make a difference with those things we're facing. So how it works, basically it brings together industry leaders, specialists, and staff across those sectors. And then there are 2 staff. Shelby's in Italy, so she couldn't be here today, but she's the communications and admin manager. And then I'm the director. And we provide overall leadership for the project management for the various projects within our initiative, you'll see later, and communication support. So the goals, I won't go into goal 1 because basically it's completed. This came out of the tree fruit industry stabilization process, which was a 2 to 3 year process that was government led with a lot of industry collaboration. But the point of this cross commodity was to bring that. There were 19 recommendations in that stabilization plan, and it was more top down. So it was to transfer those recommendations over to industry so that we could lead the ones that were within our wheelhouse and our mandates. So that's all I'm going to say about goal 1. Goal 2 and 4 and 5, I'll talk a bit more in this presentation. And goal 3, this project came with a funding pot, the stabilization fund. So we've been working as an advisory council to allocate that funding, and you'll see what we're doing with that funding coming up here. This picture here at Township 7 was our agriculture tour we hosted in in April, I believe it was. But anyways, it was a really fun tour, and we had Mary McDermott host us there, and we had 55 or so people come on that tour. So that's one of the things we've been working on as a group. So convene industry leaders. So the way we're structured is we have a partners table, and so we've got 5 people on that from the partners I listed earlier. And those are their senior staff, people like Kate and Beth sit on that committee. Then we have an advisory council. This is a picture of most of the folks on the advisory council. So we've got, again, those senior staff that sit on there, but then we have the president of the Cherry Association, Paul Ball, Adrian Arts, who's now the new BC Fruit Growers Association executive director. We've got growers like Madeline, who you can see in the picture there. She's a grower in Lake Country right here. Walt, others sit on this committee, and what their role is to provide insight into the needs of these different commodities. And then a really key function of them is to approve projects that we put forward for that stabilization funding that I I talked about. Then we have two committees. So we have the Horticultural Extension Committee and the Innovation and Technology Committee. And the role of those are to bring people from all the different other committees, like, for example, BC Wine Grape Council Research and Development, or KTT committees, the fruit growers, the cherries, they all have committees that are working on things. We bring folks, representatives from each of those together 4 times a year to talk about what they're doing, make sure we're not duplicating efforts, come up with some innovative ideas on how we can work together on different things, and those sorts of things. So right now we've got lots of people participating. It's been great momentum. And you can see the membership listed there. Folks from all different sectors and specialists and government and that kind of thing are all participating in these groups. Build capacity and expertise. So these are the current projects or past projects. So we've been operating since the fall of 2023. So some of these are complete, but these are the projects we're working on. And as I mentioned, these are funded through the Stabilization Fund. They go to the Advisory Council, and the ideas come from industry, from the committees, etc. And then we apply for funding from that Stabilization Fund, and cross-commodity staff help deliver these projects. BC DAS expansion to wine grapes is the one project we're here to talk about today. So my role in that is overall project leadership and coordination. So hiring Galen and working with Galen and delivering this project to industry. And then we provide other support as well. So for example, we jumped in and facilitated minister sessions with growers back in March when the BCFGA staff person wasn't available. We have been working with the Wine Grape Industry Task Force and have shared all of our terms of references for our committees and other CCLSP resources that we developed we shared with Abby and Lindsay, so they weren't starting from scratch. And I'm participating on the Organizational Alignment Committee. We've been also trying to expand BC DAS to other commodities, so blueberries and potatoes. So I've shared all the stuff that Galen did for phase 1 with those folks. And then we jump in to assist with AGMs and other industry events, so the Southern Ontario Hort Show and that kind of thing. So we're just like a sets of extra hands type thing, helping these industry associations with delivering services to their members. And then educate and engage is another big one. So like I said, we've been doing ag tours for local government staff and elected officials, and we have a couple more planned for the fall and then next spring. And then we host this picture at the bottom here is from our extension conference that we've hosted for 3 years now. And this is bringing together all the extension practitioners and specialists in the industry to come together for a couple of days. And it's like a train the trainer. So it gives them an opportunity to have professional development on communication, facilitation. That it's not the technical horticultural skills, it's more of the soft skills, so how to work with farmers and that kind of thing. And then they also have the opportunity to network amongst their colleagues. And I just wanted to mention too that another thing that's come out of the cross commodity is this shared calendar for tree fruits and wine grapes. So each of the industry associations have this as a link on their websites. And this is, for example, what February 2025 looked like and what February 2026 will probably look like as well. So we're all working together within the commodities to try not to duplicate efforts as in planning events on the same days or booking the same presenters and that kind of thing. So we're really trying to push this for anybody who works with tree fruits and wine grapes or is a grower or winemaker or whatever. If you're interested in professional development, check out this calendar for the opportunities that are available. So just in summary, before I hand it off to Galen, we can achieve more together, and that's what this cross-commodity project is all about. So it's bringing the cherries, apples, and grapes together to share knowledge, identify common challenges, and then work on solutions to those challenges. And because we have dedicated staff, the cross-commodity staff, we're actually able to move things forward. So we take the ideas that the industry brings to us and we action them. We provide project management, communications, any types of anything that really the industry associations need, we will provide. So as mentioned, Shelby's not here, but this is Shelby's contact information. We have a really great website that we put absolutely everything on. So it's a hub for our program as well. So all of our minutes from our committee meetings, all of our deliverables, reports from ag tours, etc., are on this website. So I encourage you to check it out when you have a free moment. And that's it from me. So I would like to actually now introduce Galen. So for those who don't know him, probably most of you do, but he's a professional agrologist with 15 years of experience in the wine and grape industry. And through his company, Barn to Bottle Consulting, Galen provides science-grounded agro-environmental solutions, full-service winemaking and viticulture support, and acts as an environmental farm plan advisor. He's a busy guy. He's also the project manager for the BC Decision Aid System, DAS, expansion to wine grapes. And we've been working closely together for about a year now. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Galen share his screen.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for the introduction. Thanks, Kathy and Kate, of course. Just going to share my PowerPoint here. So yeah, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I think just had a quick look at the guest list, and I think I know most everyone on the call, but just in case there's someone watching the recording after, I'm Galen Barnhardt, independent consultant working with CCLSP and with industry, and acting as the project manager for this expansion of the BC Decision Aid System over to wine grapes. So just quickly today, I think, quite a few people on this call are familiar with BC DAS, but I just wanted to do a quick overview. It has been in place for tree fruits for over 5 years now here in BC, and it is provided through Washington State University through a partnership. I want to talk a little bit about the expansion to wine grapes, why we're doing it now, what we're expecting to do with this expansion, what models we might be adding. We'll go through how the system works. I'm going to take us through a couple of the tree fruit models that are currently on the BC DAS platform, and introduce a couple of the grape models that are actually currently available in Washington on a different platform, but that we're hoping we may be able to import to BC DAS. And then most importantly on my end is I'm hoping to get some names, or at least I'll be able to provide my contact information. We will be doing some beta testing here over the winter, spring, and summer of next year. This phase 2 runs until December 31st of 2026. And yeah, we'll be needing a team of beta testers. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit here. So the BC DAS at its core is a software platform, and there's a number of these different software platforms that act as decision support tools. And what the DAS platform does is it hosts a variety of different models, and these models operate off of real-time weather data that's collected from a pretty large network of weather stations here in BC. We've got about 40 weather stations through the Okanagan, Similkameen, and also in the Creston Valleys. Probably 27 or so of those stations would be relevant to grape growers. The stations were really put in place near orchards, as this system currently is designed or was designed for tree fruits. But the nature of BC is that most of the orchards are in close proximity to vineyards, and so there's actually very good coverage for vineyards as well. And so those predictive models, they create actionable outputs effectively. And a lot of the models are IPM oriented. So they will be pest or disease models. But there are a variety of other models we'll talk about in a little bit here. Some of the grape specific models that are out there, there's models for cold hardiness, there's models for phenology or the growth stages of the vine, of course. There's even models for extreme heat. Some of the key features, I think, of the DAS platform that actually make it an excellent platform. Again, there's a number of platforms out there. If you have a private weather station, quite often they might come with a platform that might have a model or two on them. But I think that the great thing about DAS is that it has really clear management recommendations. It's one thing to be running a model and a platform, but unless it actually comes with some recommendations and a good understanding of what the conditions are like, then it may not be that that useful to the grower. And DAS is actually it's got quite in-depth recommendations. It has recommendations for both conventional growers and for organic growers currently on the tree fruit side, and that's something we're hoping to bring over to the grape side as well. The dashboard I find is quite intuitive. It is a browser-based dashboard. You can use it on your desktop. You can use it on your phone. Currently, there is no app, but it actually works quite well on the phone, and it's really clear. It's very easy to understand. And then the other thing is that there's really a lot of opportunity for user inputs as well to improve the accuracy. So depending on the models, certain models don't require any user input. The most basic models really just run on growing degree days quite often. But then there's more complex models that might use different sensors like precipitation or leaf wetness. And then further models where they'll have users actually input some data from their own observations. So users will go out in their vineyards or their orchards, and the model will say, okay, you know what, we need to know what growth stage the vine or the tree is at, or can you tell us if this pest or disease is present, or if the pest or disease is at a specific growth stage. And from that, the model then takes that data and inputs it into the model and generates an output accordingly, and just improves the accuracy of the model. And in fact, some models actually require that you input those biofixes. So looking at the expansion to wine grapes, currently we're in what we're calling phase 2 of the BC DAS expansion to wine grapes. Phase 1 was effectively the needs assessment that we did this past winter and early in 2025 here. And that needs assessment, I interviewed around 25 stakeholders here in BC. I think there's a few here on the call that were interviewed. But growers, consultants, researchers, academics, we also touched base with, I touched base with academics from outside of BC, down in Washington, out in Cornell, down in Oregon, just to make sure that we're getting a lot of different viewpoints. But ultimately, the results of that and the rationale for expansion were that there is definitely a lot of demand right now. We had very broad grower support and consultant support. It seems like there's a very solid user base out there. Just for context, there's twice as many vineyard acres as there are orchard acres here in BC. So certainly if it can work for tree fruits, we believe it can work for grapes. As we all know, climate change is having a huge impact. So when we start to look at some of the potential models like cold hardiness or extreme heat, I think that comes into play. Certainly seeing some big changes in pest and disease pressure, but a lot of the BC DAS platform and any of these decision support tools, a lot of it does come down to just, improving quality, and sustainability is a big piece. Especially when we talk about the IPM models, a lot of it is about, okay, what are you spraying and are you spraying it at the right time? And so if we're able to either minimize sprays or even improve the efficacy of sprays, I think that goes a long way towards sustainability. The third thing I would say is that there's just better alignment with best practices and research. The Wine Grape Council and the researchers have been an excellent guide in producing the new grape production guide. And I think this is just another avenue to create a linkage to that grape production guide and to really clue growers into what are the management practices or the current best management practices for certain conditions. So again, yeah, just going back to that needs assessment where we interviewed the stakeholders, very, very positive feedback. We did talk about what some of the priority models would be. I don't think that there's many surprises here. Powdery mildew was the one that probably came up in every single interview. Cold hardiness comes up quite a bit. Phenology certainly comes up quite a bit. I think phenology is an interesting one from the perspective that, yes, it can really help you to maybe dial in your irrigation or your spray timing around things like bloom, but it's also a model that a lot of researchers were interested in because those phenology models can be used as a backbone to build additional models or BC specific models. Speaking of BC being BC specific, growers obviously want to make sure that the outputs they're getting are relatively precise. So making sure that the weather station network coverage is quite good. And a huge piece of it is validating it out in the field or using BC data. So the way that the models work is they're trained on certain data, and because the models are often imported from other regions, they're not always trained using BC specific data. So if we're going to be bringing in models, what we're hoping to do is take either existing BC data and using that to change the parameters of the models so that they fit our climate better, or we're going to be using our beta tester crew to go out and look at their in-field observations, look at what the model is predicting and say, yes, this is a good match, or no, this is not a good match, and we can change the parameters accordingly. The other feedback we were finding is, growers want to make sure that the models are action oriented. So I already mentioned that, making sure that it's not just, tells you what the risk is and then there's nothing that comes out of it. So having some management considerations input onto the platform. And then, of course, the knowledge and tech transfer is a big piece of it. So we're doing a bit here today, but part of phase two certainly is, we want to make sure that we're hosting some roundtables or doing some field days and making sure growers are comfortable with using the technology. So yeah, the phase two project plan, again, this runs till December 31st, 2026. So we're hoping to get 1 to 3 priority models integrated into the DAS platform. A little bit of that depends on the Washington State backend. There's some programming that goes into it, of course, and then also the model availability. We have narrowed it down to what I believe are going to be the 3 models, which I'm expecting to be cold hardiness, phenology, and powdery mildew. But again, a lot of it still depends on some of these conversations with Washington State. We certainly want to be conducting beta testing in a minimum of 3 Okanagan Similkameen subregions. So because our climate is quite diverse from north to south here in the valley, as everyone knows, it's possible that the models might fit or be relatively accurate in one area, but maybe not as accurate in other areas. So hoping to get some geographic diversity in terms of our beta testing. I've set at a minimum at least 20 vineyards through the Okanagan Similkameen in those 3 different subregions. And then, our measure of success would be at least 1 model to an industry standard state of readiness, but hopefully more. And I guess I would phrase that as at least equivalent to the state of readiness of some of the models on the tree fruit platform right now. So I'm going to quickly talk about the beta testing before I finish my presentation here, because I'm going to share my browser as we go through the DAS platform itself and the Ag Weather Net. So, I mentioned before that we are hoping to get some beta testers on board here. I'd love to get a huge group, but of course I am just one person and, I can only provide feedback to so many. So I'd love to get between 12 and 20 people ultimately to act as the beta tester group. Certainly, most people, I'm hoping, you'd be either operating or advising on a vineyard in the Okanagan Similkameen. There may be some opportunity for people who just, if they're not directly involved in the vineyard, there's still going to be some opportunity because you can be at your desk looking at the model outputs and just seeing what they generate and making sure that the management considerations, the linkages to things like spray guides, that sort of thing, it all makes sense. So there's still some opportunity, even if you're not working directly in the vineyard. Obviously, you have to provide feedback and make your data available. So if you're going out and you're collecting observational data in the vineyard, then we'll need that data for validation purposes. And very obvious, be able to use some basic web tools. Again, the DAS platform is very intuitive, and I think most people will be able to learn it pretty quickly. I'm not looking for a big time commitment. I'm looking at probably roughly an hour kickoff webinar or a meeting to talk about the beta testing process. There will be some feedback sessions through the season. So depending on the model, the season for a cold hardiness model would run from, say, the beginning of December through to March. For something like a phenology or a powdery mildew model, you're looking more like April, May, all the way through to just past veraison or into harvest. Most of the time, the feedback sessions would be roughly every 2 weeks, where we just have a quick chat, talk about what you're seeing out there, what you'd like to see changed, or if there's any issues, and then just a final survey or interview. So any beta testers interested, it's probably only going to be a 3 to 4 hour total commitment over the season. I'd certainly welcome you using the models more than that. But if you are interested, I know that the Wine Grape Council we're going to send out a little 1-pager just describing exactly what we're hoping from beta testers and a way to get in touch with me. So chat a little bit about how the system works. Again, I think some of you are probably familiar with the DAS platform, but the weather station network, which is now on the provincial ministry Agri Weather Net. So there are 40 stations. Again, some of them are down in Creston. There's one near Greenwood there, but probably roughly 27 stations that are relevant to grape growers here in the Okanagan and Similkameen. So at some point or another, it is maybe feasible over the long term to incorporate private stations. We did get a lot of feedback during phase 1 that people were interested in doing so. But I would say at this point, that's not within the scope of our phase 2. We're just going to move forward with the existing weather stations. And should the expansion be a success, certainly something we could look at down the road. In fact, that's something that Washington State currently does. Admittedly, just addressing a couple of the weaknesses of the current network. Again, it was built originally for tree fruit, so there are a few gaps. The biggest gaps, probably the Skaha East area, Kaleden, and Okanagan Falls. So I would say the vast majority of vineyards are within roughly 5 kilometers of the weather station network. But yeah, south Similkameen and east side of Skaha and Okanagan Falls, there are some gaps, as much as sort of 16 to 25 kilometers from the nearest stations. So that is something to think about. It doesn't mean that the models aren't going to work. It just means that, the closer you are in proximity to those stations, then usually the more accurate. Some of the models are more accurate over broad distances than others. Models that rely strictly on temperature data tend to be more accurate over larger distances, and that's just because if you exclude big changes in topography or elevation, temperature seems to be fairly stable over larger areas, and so those models that operate just on temperature are fairly accurate over those larger areas. Whereas a model that might rely on precipitation or leaf wetness, well, precipitation patterns can obviously be very patchy. So if you're a long way from a weather station, then those models might be a little bit less accurate for you. So that is just the end of that particular presentation. I'm just going to share now the actual DAS platform itself for those that haven't played around with it before. And anyone right now can go in and make themselves an account. It's, again, very intuitive, but I hope everyone can see my browser screen there. So you're just going to make a profile, just like any login, very simple. And this will be the main page that when you log in, it takes you to. And then what you want to do is you want to go to add stations. So I've already added a variety of stations here. But what I would say is, let's say you are a grower in the Penticton area, and let's say Summerland actually, and you want to go in and you know where your vineyard is located. All you've got to do there is click on the nearest station, whichever one you think is in the closest proximity to your vineyard. Just go ahead and add it and save it. Very basic. So that's going to bring you to this screen where you've got all your stations. So I've already loaded up a variety of stations here. And at each station, it's going to show you what models are currently available. So you can see that there's just a plethora of models available on the tree fruit side right now. So there's models for insects, there's models for horticulture, there's models that predict bloom, there's models that predict when apples will reach their maximum ripeness, there's models for diseases, all kinds of options. And nearly every station is going to have the full range of models available to it. So all of the models obviously depend on different sensors, but nearly all of our stations have the full array of sensors. So you're talking temperature, humidity, leaf wetness, precipitation, and a few others there. There are a couple of sensors that we'd like to add eventually, including soil temperature sensors, but again, that won't be part of the phase 2 here. The one thing I want to point out is you can make a little virtual station. So if you find that your vineyard is not particularly close to a station, so I said, oh, I've got a vineyard in Peachland actually here. What you can do is you can actually click on the map, as I've done already here, but you could choose a new location. And you could say, okay, well, I'm a long way from either weather station, but you could click this here and you can actually add what they say is a virtual station. And what that virtual station is going to do is it's going to use its own modeling to predict what it would believe is the temperature and appropriate weather data in that area. I can't say for sure whether that's going to be more accurate than actual weather data collected at a proper weather station, but it is an option for people that are in larger gaps and always just something that you can test out. You have options over here on the left-hand side. You can either view by the station or you can also view by the model. So if we go into the view by station, I'm just going to say that we are in South Kelowna now. You can see that there's a whole list of models that you can choose from. Now, some of the models will be complete for the season. So of course, ambrosia is well past bloom. And so the model just says, see you next year. Yeah, okay, we understand that. Instead, we could look at I'm going to look at a couple different little tree fruit models here. So fire blight is a model that's still active right now. So when you look at an active model, they all come up a little bit differently, but fairly similar. Usually in the top left here, you're going to have conditions and management. Those conditions in management, again, the conditions, it's really just going to give you a high-level blurb about what the conditions are like lately, and then some management considerations down below. The one thing I want to point out with these management considerations is that we have options for both conventional and organic. So again, this is something that we're hoping to import to the grape side as well. Whichever models would require some different considerations for conventional or organic, we're hoping will be there. So on the conventional side, there again, I know nothing about fire blight because I am not an expert in orchards. But there's an opportunity to apply an antibiotic, various biologicals on the organic side. A little bit different, obviously. They're talking about preventative treatments more than anything. This model here, so it's incorporating growing degree days. If we look on the right-hand side at the chart here, so it's taking into account growing degree days, precipitation, and leaf wetness as the weather variables. And you can see with the conditions management, it's creating a risk rating. So right now, it's got a risk rating of 531. That number doesn't mean a whole lot, and really it's more for the purposes of the model more than anything. But what you can also see is that there's over on the right-hand side, you can see that there's marginal risk, there's high risk, and there's extreme risk. Currently, we're somewhere in the middle between high and extreme. So it's saying that the current risk rating for fire blight is high. Now, I mentioned before that there's opportunity for user input. So currently it's high, but we said that there was no fire blight in the area last year. What happens if we change it so that we said, oh, there actually was some fire blight in the area last year. So you've got perhaps some residual disease around, might cause a higher incidence this year. So if we change that factor, that actually changes the model. So now our risk rating has actually gone up, and the risk rating is extreme in this case. So again, I realize this is a tree fruit specific model, but I just wanted to show some of the features that various models have, and you can expect some similar features for the grape models. Another model, so that was a disease model. This is quickly the codling moth model, which is a very popular model. Obviously, codling moth is a huge issue for orchards here in BC. So this is our pest model. This model is almost entirely dependent, or is entirely dependent on growing degree days. With this model, you can choose which crop, so your apple or pear, and then choose your crop stage. So we're going to say that, yes, we're apple and we are in summer. And the model, or excuse me, the DAS platform links directly to the BC Tree Fruit Production Guide and to the spray guide. So it's going to give you an entire list of sprays here that you could be using for codling moth. And if you even click on the sprays themselves, it brings up even more information. So it tells you rates, PHIs, re-entry intervals, and even like some great information on what are the impacts of those pesticides on beneficial insects. So it's really in depth. And I think really, again, helps to tie those best practices guides back to the growers. So that is for conventional. If we go to the little slider button here under the spray guide, we can actually switch it over to organic. Okay, obviously quite a few fewer options, but just shows the organic sprays that are available to you. And again, this is all BC specific. So these are linking to the BC Tree Fruit Production Guide. We would do a similar thing with grapes. It'd be the BC Grape Production Guide and the BC Grape Spray Guide. So you can rest assured that it would be continuously updated to conform with current regulations. So that's quickly a very quick rundown of the DAS platform. I did want to show a couple of the models that are currently available down in Washington that we're hoping to bring on board. So Washington has two platforms. They have the DAS platform that they run on their end, and then they have another platform that they run called Ag WeatherNet. They're both based out of Washington State. Ag WeatherNet is, again, a different platform, so don't stress about the platform too much. But we are going to look quickly at the models here. So here we've got, I have my weather stations up top here. So Oroville, Prosser, Sunnyside, and then this is Walla Walla. I can choose what cultivar I want to choose. So I'm going to say Cabernet Sauvignon. And this is the prediction, or was the prediction, I should say, because we're already past the point of prediction for these particular models. But these are the predictions for Prosser, for Cabernet Sauvignon at that particular weather station. So the Zapata model predicted that bud break was going to be between April 17th and 26th, full bloom June 2nd and 9th, and Veraison from the 25th to the 8th. So that model gives you a bit of a window when he thinks bud break will start and end. Same with bloom and Veraison. And then the Parker model, which is one of the models we're looking to bring onto the BC DAS platform, doesn't do bud break, but it does do bloom and Veraison. And rather than give you a window, it just says, here's where we think 50% bloom will occur, and here's where we think 50% Veraison will occur. So again, this is for Cabernet Sauvignon in Prosser. So it predicted that full bloom would be June 6th and August 7th for Veraison. Conversely, Walla Walla, a little bit warmer, so the dates are a little bit earlier. So same variety, it's saying June 2nd for bloom and August 1st for Veraison. So again, these phenology models, they are very simple. They are cultivar specific. And the good thing about the Parker model and the Zapata model is it has pretty much all of the most commonly grown varieties that we grow here in BC. And you might ask, okay, well, what's the point of having this phenology model? Again, from a researcher perspective, these can serve as a backbone for future research. I think as a grower, though, it can be really useful when you think about being able to do bloom timing. If you're able to predict bloom a few weeks out, I think that's really critical in terms of timing those very, very important sprays around bloom. And then certainly for Veraison, I think of it from like an irrigation perspective. If you're doing deficit irrigation, you might say, okay, I want to max out my deficit irrigation just before Veraison. I've got this model that's telling me that it's going to happen in a few weeks here, so I can time my irrigation sets accordingly. And even for things like planning harvest labor, I find it helpful. Like Veraison is always a bit of a marker point where you go, okay, or 6 weeks out or whatever it is, and the model's telling me that Veraison's 3 weeks from there. So I think that there's growers will use them in different ways, but certainly there's a lot of utility to those models. And then the last model I want to show off here, this is the cold hardiness model. So this model here you see in blue, this is, I actually pulled up from 2023, 2024, just to make a point because it got cold. So this is again is for Walla Walla, and this is for Merlot. So you can again choose whichever cultivar you want. And then choose whichever weather station is for you. So again, this would be any of the 27 or so weather stations in BC. And what these models do is there's actually two models. I'm just pointing out one here. This is a machine learning model called Grape HardyNet, and they take that weather data. This model actually incorporates not just air temperature to make its predictions, but also utilizes some other information like precipitation and humidity. But it takes all of that data and predicts exactly what the LT50 will be for that point in time during the season. So you can see for most of the season, the air temperature was well above what it thought the LT50 would be for Merlot all the way through the season, all the way until we get to here and we get to January 13th and you go, oh, wow, that's actually pretty close. And then the cool part about this with this model and a couple of the others is that it can also infer what the LT10, where it believes roughly 10% of the buds would be killed, and the LT90, where roughly 90% of the buds would be killed. So you can see here that on that date that we did not reach the LT50 temperature of minus 9 degrees Fahrenheit, but we did exceed the LT10 temperature of minus 6 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, some of the feedback we got from growers was, okay, it's nice to have a model that tells me when buds might die, but by the time the winter cold snap comes along, there's really not that much I can do about it. Okay, fair point. I understand that. But what I would say is that it's not really what the models are designed for. It's more really to be able to guide pruning decisions, maybe help to reduce labor in terms of how much bud dissection you might be doing, and also give you an idea of how your yields might be impacted this coming year. So when you see a data point like this, you might say, okay, the model's telling me that, we're somewhere between the LT10 and the LT50. So you know what? I'm going to adjust my pruning accordingly. I'm going to leave either some more buds or I'm going to leave an extra cane, whatever it might be. Or, for this variety, I met the LT10, but for another variety, like if I brought up Chardonnay, I didn't meet the LT10. So I'm going to be more worried about Oh, my internet, of course, is going to be very slow. Oh, there we go. I'm going to be more worried about this particular variety or over that one. So you can see with Chardonnay, the LT10 was not exceeded during that period. So again, this is just an example of one of the models we're hoping to bring on board, where we actually have access to a great data set out of Summerland with the cold hardiness that we're able to use for validation of any of these models, which we expect will improve the fit for the BC DAS platform. I am going to stop sharing now. And again, just want to say again that we look forward to having a full complement of people on board for the beta testing. So if anyone is interested, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll make my contact information available through the Wine Grape Council and the Grape Growers after this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Galen. That's super interesting. We have a question from Ben Min. Go ahead.
No, that's another question. That's a collapse.
Oh. Okay, well, you could praise Galen for his work on this. That's what the clap means. I think Hans has a question, an actual one.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, very interesting. Really love this idea. I mean, the question I have, I mean, there is a growing network of Davis weather stations in vineyards in the Okanagan that are somewhat semi-public. I can see in my area, I can see 10 weather stations, including mine, and that is sort of from Falls, Skaha Lake to the Black Sage. And I believe there are probably quite a few more. And I think that the numbers are also growing. And actually using these as an input instead of the orchard ones, that would really be fantastic if that was possible.
Yeah,
The other option, I'm not quite sure whether I understand the idea of the virtual station, right? Is there a possibility to actually change or input values yourself and make up your own database, basically, that feeds the virtual station? Or how do these work?
Not that I know of, Hans. I believe, I mean, it uses modeling like, if you've ever gone on the Windy app, anything like that, there's a variety of models that exist out there where they'll say, okay, this weather station here is reading this temperature, and this weather station on the other side of your virtual station is reading this temperature, and it would infer the temperature between the two accordingly. So at this point, no, unfortunately, there's no way to input what you're actually experiencing. And we've had a lot of growers echo what you're saying about the private weather stations. I mean, there's a whole range of them. I was trying to get a feel for how many are out there, and I think it's probably over 100 in the various vineyards here in the Okanagan Similkameen. And I think it would be excellent at some point to be able to include those, but with that, there's certainly some quality assurance issues that we would need to work through. The questions that we might ask is, okay, who's calibrating that station? Is it located in an appropriate spot? Are the sensors being calibrated and maintained appropriately? And then the other piece right now is just the agreement that we have with Washington State. So the agreement right now is just for the 40 weather stations that we have in place. This agreement runs through, I believe, to the end of 2027. Kelly, forgive me if I'm wrong, but to end of 2027. So basically, for the time being and for phase 2 here, we're just going to run with the 40 weather stations, and then we'll sort of reassess after that. But I think it is definitely a big point to bring up. And also, Washington right now, they actually charge growers to include their weather station. I don't think it's like a particularly big fee or anything, but if you want to add your private weather station, get access to the models, then there's a nominal fee. And that might be a way to improve the long-term funding sustainability of the system as well.
Yeah, it would be great.
And Galen, Kate's asking if you're specifically looking for beta testers at specific proximities to the existing weather stations.
No, not necessarily. I actually think it's good to get a diverse array of different vineyards that might be in closer proximity or further away, because just by doing that, we can say, okay, maybe the reason that this particular model is not working that well is because it is at quite a distance from a weather station, and maybe the reason that this one is working quite well is it is in closer proximity. And so we would have to look at the data just to sort of, make that picture make sense. But I'm honestly open to anybody that wants to participate. We're mostly just trying to get a broad diversity over the whole valley or the whole valleys.
Do you have any other questions? My questions are all related to leafhopper. So I'm not even sure what they are, but I'm like, wow, what are we doing?
So it has come up quite a bit, and there are some leafhopper models out there. Unfortunately, they are not for the species that we get here in the valley. So I'm not sure how accurate they would be, but maybe this can be a job for Asim, that we can utilize one of those existing models and adapt it to our species.
Well, and I really
We're
feel
doing
like
some phenology tracking too.
I feel like our species is adapting to climate change in like an unpleasant way, I think, right? Hans, go ahead.
Yeah, other question regarding the powdery mildew model. Is this based on the Gubler-Thomas model, or is this something that was developed in Washington State?
So the powdery model, I'm not sure if I know that exact model you mentioned, Hans, but there is a very classic model out of UC Davis, which is maybe the same that I think was made in like 1990, I want to say. And there's, yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's a number of those models out there, and I know that many growers, the feedback on that model is that it hasn't been particularly useful. A lot of growers felt like the model would just tell you when you could stop spraying, more or less. So the model that we're hoping to bring on has been developed down in Washington, and I think it's got advantages for two reasons. One is they're expecting to actually layer some phenology data into it, so it will take into account the fact that the vines are more susceptible to powdery at certain times of year than others, and adjust the risk index accordingly. And then the other piece is, I think a lot of people feel that the powdery models haven't worked very well in BC because the powdery pressure that we experience is always higher than what the models predict. My hope is that because this new model is being developed in Washington and validated on Washington data, and that maybe we will get a chance to do some validation here in BC, that'll be more accurate in terms of its predictions.
No, thanks.
You're welcome.
Taylor is asking what our species of leafhopper is.
Western grape usually, and Virginia creeper leafhopper are the two major ones, is my understanding.
Oh yeah, Asim answered.
Thank you, Asim. I should have left it to the expert.
Yeah, I was told at one point that it wasn't Virginia creeper. So should we take out Virginia creeper near vineyards, Asim? Would that be smart, or?
Typically,
Sorry, I didn't quite catch you.
Should we remove Virginia creeper from proximity to vineyards? Would that be a strategy? The actual plant?
I have done that.
I don't know.
in the past.
The adults overwinter in a lot of different kinds of vegetation, so I don't think they're gonna really. I don't know how big of a difference it would make, because I think there's lots of other plants that they'll overwinter on, so it's kind of hard to say. I have heard some growers complain about roses being particularly bad, so maybe those, but
Yeah, I know. Well, the roses that are planted at the end of every row. Yeah. Lisa, did you have?
Yeah, I have done that in the past in vineyards and removed Virginia creeper at areas because I would see the hot spots in the vineyards were closest to Virginia creeper, so I removed that as a start.
Yeah.
And then in general, from my experience, the Western grape leafhopper is the more predominant leafhopper in the Osoyoos area, by far. And then as you go further north, it switches more into the Virginia creeper.
Okay, sorry, Galen, I kind of sidetracked things there.
No, this is good.
I'm wondering, Ben Min, could you comment on, like, do you see a synergy here with your GIS? Is there a tie-in?
GIS, yeah, location wise, I think that will be a good guide, says that where are our vineyard in the valley, right? So we
Mhm.
probably could provide like a kind of like a hotspot map, that kind of information, and then say, okay, here is probably the better location to have a new weather station, right? If we
Right.
want to say, you want to determine where is the best location in, say, okay, for that gap, right? And why not just put a weather station in the center of the hotspot? I think that will
Right.
cover most of the vineyard. So this is one of the application we can do. Yeah.
Is there weather station data overlaid on your system?
Currently no.
But it
Mm.
could happen
Yeah.
with more funding, maybe.
Or better agreement with our department. You know, like just like why we can share the information more easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Galen and Kelly, I guess you've had communication with Park about that sort of thing?
Yeah, to some extent, I mean, Ben Min and I have certainly been in touch. He was part of the phase 1 needs assessment, and we've just touched base the other day in terms of utilizing the Summerland's LT50 data to validate one of the cold hardiness models to make sure that that fit is better for BC.
Yeah, and our cold hardness measurement is actually, we're collecting samples from all over the valley. Yeah, so not just from Summerland.
And does it use the same weather station data?
We actually install kind of like a tiny data logger on site.
Oh, okay.
So that might be another thing we can do, is actually trying to cross-reference and then see how these weather station data, are they matched to those really localized temperature measurement. Yeah.
So Galen, is the software designed to be able to, like, I know that's outside of the scope of the program to be collecting the data, but does the software allow for it if the program is expanded?
Yes, it certainly would. You know, on the Washington side, they have, God, I don't even know, hundreds of weather stations. So certainly as more stations get added, if the licensing agreement allowed for it, or there is funding available for adding weather stations, then that can easily be done.
Right. Guess the take home here is funding.
Yeah, as always.
Right. Benman, do you?
Yeah, so I think in Washington State they manage all the weather station, like they categorize them into different tiers. Yeah,
Oh,
so right, so that's maybe another approach in the future we can try to adapt, right? Like for example, those 40 weather station currently we have, and I think mostly probably the province have the control over it, right? So those will be a higher tier one, and we can guarantee the data quality will be better. And we put those volunteer weather station under the other tier.
I think that makes sense, Benjamin.
Yeah.
I mean, Farm West did a little bit of that back when you could see which ones were Environment and Climate Change Canada, and currently, you know, we can see which stations are monitored by the province or Andy Nadler at Peak Hydromet. But yeah, again, that's the risk with the private stations, of course, is that the quality assurance isn't there, and if that might be fine for the grower that owns the station, but if they have a neighbor who is basing their decisions off of the data or the outputs that come out of that station, if the data is off, then there is some risk, some liability risk there.
Right, that's true.
So, and what about smoke? Because I know that smoke increases the powdery mildew pressure, but do the models account for that, or just only through sort of humidity?
Yeah, not that I know of, Kathy. I don't know of any sensors that are specifically looking for smoke at this point, or any models are incorporating that data point. But yeah, I would imagine it's something to think about for future researchers for sure.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably a next stage. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so when you were talking about the powdery mildew issue, I was actually thinking about UV light, right? Like so when there is a UV light present, those are powdery mildew, basically they were suppressed. So either say the smoky day, the UV just gone, and
Oh,
also in the valley here, the hill we got like a in May, I just like drove through Carrot Mills. I didn't notice the hill is wow. That's yeah. The landscape there is pretty amazing. But that also means the real direct sunlight is actually pretty short over there. So that might
hills. That's what you're saying.
actually
The hills, the shadows. Yeah,
yeah, the shadow, the
yeah.
mountains around is actually pretty
Oh,
tall.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
that
that's
might be
interesting.
some factor might influence powdery mildew incident. Yeah.
So perhaps a UV sensor could act as a proxy for
Right,
smoke levels
right,
and utilize
Oh,
that to incorporate that into your model.
right.
Right.
That might
wow,
be
that's
a direction. But I'm not a pathologist, you know. Just
but there is that group, that Washington I guess base group that's just, I think, just announced collaboration around smoke and smoke taint. It was in my news feed the other day. Which I think there, there could be some good coordination there between both DAS systems and whatever that group is going to come up with. Right.
the West Coast something, right? The West Coast
Yeah.
smoke task force. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Sorry, I'm treating this like it's my own personal little discussion group again. I think that we will hear from you again more than once, Galen, before this project is completed, and I think that would be awesome. I think,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, this is a forum that will, will always be open to helping and sort of hearing from you and giving input. So stay tuned for that. Right, Kate?
Yes, absolutely. That's right. Thank you for attending.
Okay, so yeah, Kate will send out Galen's one-pager recruiting beta testers. Tell your friends, have them watch this video, and stay tuned, because I think this is a really cool step. Yeah, also stay tuned, because we don't have a scheduled third Thursday for September, but there will be one. I just can't tell you what it's going to be. And one more question from Hans, because he hates that hard stop right at 1.
Yeah, sorry. Just a comment on the leafhoppers, because the leafhoppers, both the Western and the Virginia creeper leafhopper overwinter as adults. This is really easy to predict when they are starting to oviposit and also when they are starting to emerge. So, this is one thing that can be observed easily with a magnifying glass. It becomes really complex in the second and third generation, if there's a third generation, because they
Right.
tend to overlap, and then there it really is no longer of much use, because it is, they are often at very different stages, the second and the beginning of the third generation, if there's.
Right.
So it is that these are complex things to do, but the first the overwintering first generation is fairly easily predicted, probably with degree days.
Okay, so for future consideration. Thanks, Hans. All right, thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you in September. Yeah, we might be into for sure. Some people will be into harvest. So stay tuned. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Galen. That was awesome.